Hey, Daniel, Matt Jones. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you again.
Now, I'm really curious the fact that you look Korean, but you're actually born in America.
Yeah, born in Chicago.
So it'd be more appropriate to say you're American.
Yes, Korean American to be specific.
Korean
yeah,
American.
American. Yeah, culturally, I would say.
So it's interesting because I guess looking at someone at face value, we can make very quick judgments about who someone is.
Yeah.
I'm currently doing a project called Friendship Tree, looking at the friendship between Australia and Korea, and I think it's easy for us to sort of look at Caucasian Australians, saying Australians, and then Koreans, and then saying Koreans. But increasingly today, there's much more of a diversity in terms of a lot of Korean people who have been born in Australia.
Sure.
So I think they're still at the moment going through this challenge of working out who they actually are in terms of identity. Not that it really matters that much, but I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the first Australians who came to Korea.
Okay.
And I know you're not Australian.
Right.
But you are a church minister.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're in your church right now.
Where are we?
We're in your church right now. Your
Yeah.
church,
Oh yeah.
And the church name is Saemoonan. Saemoonan.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Says new. I believe moon is gate. So new gate, and then I think this is referring to this region.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. Interesting. So is it a play on words of Guanhamu? Do you think?
I think so. Yeah.
Right,
I think so.
okay.
I mean,
Right.
from my understanding. At
Yeah,
least,
it's quite back in the day, it must have been quite a progressive metaphor.
Right. Yeah.
Look, I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to just speak to the fact that the first Australians who came to Korea that we know of were missionaries.
Yes.
And they did great work looking at the role of women,
Right.
education, schooling. And I know it's difficult sometimes to put that into context, because when we tell the story of friendship, we sort of mention these missionaries and it is some good stuff, and then we jump ahead to the Korean War and then talk about business.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really make sense of why these people were here. I mean, this church here, is this the first Presbyterian church in Korea?
It is the first Presbyterian church in Korea. Yeah.
So, like, looking at this church for a minute, why on earth do people come to Korea to do that?
Well, the easy answer would be the gospel message, but also I think there was a sense, and you have to remember where Korea was during that time. I think it was much poorer.
Late 19th century, right?
19th century, late 19th century, yeah.
Okay.
Late 19th century, it was a very poor country, much poorer than it is now, and you have to think of it as a third world nation. And there was a heart for people who were lost, but also people who were in the most dire of circumstances.
Wow.
And so there was a sense of, I want to go there and, yes, preach the gospel and share the message to people who didn't know the gospel message, but also to do some development, because I don't know exactly what, I think that the country opened up to the West around that time too. Just
around that time,
maybe around that time, yeah.
Yeah.
It was closed up to that point, so.
But it's interesting was whether it was sort of forced open whether it was forced open by sort of military action, or whether the missionaries had played a role in opening it up. I'm not quite sure.
Right, perhaps it was a combination of the two, actually. Yeah.
So I mean, why the focus on the gospel? I guess you can't separate a missionary out from the gospel. Mm-hmm. And I ask that question because I'm here at church with you, so I can understand that. But I know a lot of people have some antagonism toward the church, or they've had maybe bad experiences, or they just think it's maybe irrelevant today. And so when we look at this story of friendship between Australia and Korea, and it comes to the missionaries, they sort of think, well, they're nice people. Let's get on with the rest of the story. What is, can you put that into context? You as a minister, for people who maybe don't have a church background or don't want to have a church background, how can we make sense of the motivation of those first missionaries? Similar to this church here, I told
Right. Like I said earlier, I think there was a sense of people's lostness and an understanding that here's this unchurched area, don't know the gospel, firmly rooted in a Confucian and Buddhist culture, and for the first time doors are open for missionaries to go in and share that message. And so I think that's what drove the earliest missionaries. When I read about church history, mission history, it is a sense of a sadness, a mourning over people who their fates are unknown. I mean, you can say explicitly going to hell, but unsaved. And so I think there was a heart of compassion for that group of people.
I mean, it's very interesting to think about, because whether you're Christian or not Christian, that sort of conviction, that motivation to go and help people from the perspective of those missionaries shows an incredible conviction towards sacrifice to do that. And so, do you think there's any, like this church, old church, now we're in Korea, a lot of things moved on. Do you think there's any necessary link between those first missionaries, either from Americans or Australians, and what happens today in Korea, either generally or from an American national perspective, from Australian national perspective? Like, is it just a fact of history, or is there sort of some sort of more?
Yeah, I think I can speak for our church. We do try to remember the legacy of Underwood, and we have a symposium every year to celebrate his work with the church. And I know Cheongdong Methodist Church, they also do the same with missionary Appenzeller. But generally, there doesn't seem to be that explicit connect between what the Americans did and now. Even at my school that I taught at SFS, the Underwoods, I think just 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they kind of left the country saying, our work as American missionaries are done. It's a self-sustaining ministry here. I can't say, I don't know enough about the Australian ministry or which churches are tied to that tradition. But I know individual churches do have their ways of bringing back that, or making that connection a little tighter.
Look, thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
Yes, of course, my pleasure.
That for me makes it really brings a lot of clarity to the. At times, it's not all that clear what individual people have done, and sort of national engagement. So when we say Australia, Korea, these people are Australians, but they're acting from their own sense of conviction, beyond national boundaries, really. It's also very, very interesting hearing your story and a bit about this church here too. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been